The kingdom of Elpasa lay in ruins, its palace under siege. Blood stained the ground as the invaders ruthlessly ransacked every corner. A soldier held a blade to a woman's neck, demanding to know if she was the princess. Without waiting for her reply, he killed her. In the shadows, Chloe, the half-royal princess of Elpasa, watched the horror unfold. "Is this how my second life will end too?" she thought, panic creeping in as the attackers came closer. Even though she was only half-royal, the invaders wouldn't leave until they found and executed her. Summoning all her courage, Chloe stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "It's me! I'm Princess Beatrice," she shouted, catching the attention of a soldier. He sneered at her and asked mockingly, "Do you want to live? Your husband sold you and your kingdom. Do you even want to live?" The soldiers around him laughed at her misery. Despite her fear, Chloe stood firm. "I still want to live," she admitted, her voice shaking. "But if you must kill me, do it quickly. Spare the maids. They're innocent. Let them live, even if as slaves." The soldier grinned, turning to his captain, Alessandro Graham, who approached with a cold, calculating gaze. Without hesitation, Alessandro ordered, "Kill her. Hang her head on the palace door." Chloe shivered at his command, realizing this was the infamous captain of the Nesteros Empire's royal guard. As Alessandro walked away, his lieutenant, Evan, intervened. "Should we spare her for now? She's Gilbert's wife," he suggested. Alessandro hesitated, recalling that Chloe's mother was a foreign slave, and because of her dark hair and eyes, her children wouldn't pose a threat to the kingdom's blonde-haired line of succession. "Do as you see fit," Alessandro said indifferently, leaving the decision to Evan. Chloe, still trembling, sank to the floor as the soldiers captured her and the maids, sparing their lives but killing the others. "I survived," Chloe thought, though the fear of Alessandro's icy command haunted her. Meanwhile, Alessandro, disgusted by the bloodshed, retreated to a room, staring blankly out the window. He was interrupted by Gilbert, the Chancellor of Elpasa and Chloe's husband, who had sold out his kingdom for wealth and power. Gilbert, now eager to claim his promised rewards, asked Alessandro when he would receive the land and title he was promised for his betrayal. Alessandro, unimpressed, found Gilbert's greed tiresome. "You promised me lordship of Elpasa," Gilbert reminded him, his anxiety growing. Alessandro questioned him about his wife, Chloe. Gilbert dismissed her as a half-blooded princess, saying that whatever happened to her was none of his concern. He even suggested it might be safer to exterminate all of Elpasa's royalty. Alessandro, disgusted by Gilbert's coldness toward his own wife, offered him a choice. "Will you take the princess, or shall I keep her as a slave?" he asked. Gilbert, indifferent, focused only on securing his title. Alessandro left the room, not waiting for his answer, revolted by the man's betrayal and lack of humanity. How disgusting, Alessandro thought, reflecting on the betrayal of the kingdom and the fate of the last princess. In the prison, the maids were in despair. "I'd rather die than live like this," one maid sobbed. Chloe, determined to keep everyone calm, tried to reassure them. "Stop crying. I know things seem hopeless now, but one day you'll be grateful for choosing to live." But the maid, Rumi, wasn't convinced. "How can we live as slaves in Nesteros? You can't imagine the horrors we'll face," she replied. Chloe, remembering her own past, responded gently, "If you die, there's no second chance. At least we're still alive. I promise, living is better than giving up." Rumi, frustrated, lashed out. "Easy for you to say, since you were born a slave. For me, becoming a slave is worse than death." Chloe, taken aback, paused. Rumi's words struck a nerve, and she silently acknowledged the truth. "Yes, I was born a slave," Chloe thought, recalling her past with sadness. The other maids tried to defend Chloe, shocked at Rumi's outburst. But Chloe, looking at them, said, "You're right. I was happier during my 23 years as a slave than I ever was as a princess." Trying to show her gratitude, Chloe told the maids, "Thank you for everything you did while we were in the palace." The maids were stunned, unsure how to respond. Chloe continued, "We're all slaves now. You don't have to treat me as a princess anymore." Just then, Rio, one of the guards, entered the prison with a sneer. "Princess? What princess? You're just a slave now," he taunted. "If you're so happy to be a slave again, should we throw you a celebration?" His sinister grin terrified the women. Meanwhile, in the castle, Alessandro informed Evan of Gilbert's decision. "What? Gilbert didn't want his wife back?" Evan asked, shocked. Alessandro, amused, replied, "She means nothing to him now." Evan couldn't believe that Gilbert would abandon his own wife to become a war slave. If she's no longer useful, shouldn't we kill her to prevent any rebellion? Evan suggested, but Alessandro dismissed the idea. Her children can't take the throne, so she's not a threat. Evan, observing Alessandro, wondered why he spared Chloe. Does he feel pity for her? He thought. He knew Alessandro despised people like Gilbert, having grown up surrounded by power struggles within the royal family. Alessandro had become numb to violence and politics, having gone to war at just 15 years old to escape palace life. People viewed him as ruthless, but Evan saw the exhaustion behind Alessandro's eyes. As Alessandro prepared to leave, Evan reminded him of the upcoming victory celebration. "The Emperor plans to give you a new title," he mentioned. Alessandro's expression darkened. "A Grand Duke? Is this my father's way of compensating for me rejecting the throne?" Alessandro thought bitterly, resenting the endless manipulation of royal power. Without a word, he walked out, slamming the door behind him. Back in the prison, Rio continued to torment Chloe. "So you were born a slave, huh? You must be excited to go back to your roots," he mocked, ripping her dress. The other guards joined in, making crude remarks about her appearance. "I've never seen a girl with dark hair before. I wonder if the carpet matches the drapes," one laughed. As they continued their taunts, Rio pulled a hot metal rod from the fire. "In Nosteros, slaves are marked on their bodies. Did you know that, Miss Slave?" he sneered, stepping closer with the brand. Chloe's heart raced as she realized what he intended. "Is he going to mark me?" She panicked, struggling to contain her fear. Rio violently grabbed Chloe by the hair, dragging the hot metal brand close to her face. "Where should it go, Your Highness? Forehead? Neck? Or maybe those pretty little cheeks?" he sneered, while the soldiers watching laughed at her helplessness. Before he could go any further, Evan interrupted. "That's enough, Rio. War slaves belong to the Empire until they're officially assigned to knights. You don't have the authority to mark her, which would make her the lowest of slaves." Chloe, confused, wondered, "The lowest grade of slaves?" Rio, visibly annoyed, tossed the brand aside, but not without making another request. "Fine, then let me take the princess. A princess turned slave? So intriguing," he said, grinning. Evan coldly rejected him. "Wait for the official distribution of slaves and territories, and even then I wouldn't give her to a brute like you." Angered, Rio grabbed Chloe by the neck and hissed, "Just you wait," before biting her ear and tossing her roughly into her cell. As Chloe lay on the floor, humiliated, she questioned herself. Is this kind of life even worth living? Suddenly, a commotion stirred nearby. "We found her! We found the last princess!" a soldier shouted, dragging Princess Alicia into view. "Let me go!" Alicia screamed, trying to resist the guards holding her. She had been found hiding in the palace storage, and they reported this to Alessandro. Calmly observing the scene, Alessandro gave a chilling command. "Behead her and hang her head on the palace door," he said, walking away. Alicia, enraged, yelled after him, "You traitor! How dare you side with Gilbert and betray our kingdom? I hear your father took the throne through an uprising. Like father, like son. Both of you are filthy traitors." Her words made Alessandro pause, but his face remained cold. "What have you ever done to save your country other than beg for marriage?" he asked, cutting through her insults. Shocked, Alicia spat in his face. Chloe, watching from her cell, was horrified. Alessandro wiped his face, his expression darkening. "Bring me my sword," he ordered, as soldiers scrambled to obey. He turned back to Alicia, eyes cold. "Now you'll wish you had accepted the mercy of a swift beheading," he said, drawing his sword, leaving Alicia terrified. Princess Alicia's panic filled the room as Alessandro, cold and silent, slowly ripped her dress with his blade, drawing blood. The knights around them watched uneasily but remained still. "Wait, please stop!" Alicia cried, collapsing to the floor, her once proud demeanor crumbling. Alessandro only stared, his disdain clear. Rio, another knight, smirked. "Raised in a palace, huh? That's all you can handle?" Alicia, desperate, pleaded for mercy, her voice trembling as she begged Alessandro to spare her. He ignored her words, lifting her from the ground. The knights whispered among themselves, wondering if Alicia would be enslaved like so many before her. But Alicia's pleas only fueled Alessandro's anger. Without hesitation, he ended her life with a swift stab. "Hang her on the palace door," he ordered as Rio sighed in disappointment. Chloe, hidden nearby, froze in horror. The scene before her sent shivers down her spine. When a maid touched her shoulder, she almost screamed. "Are you all right, Your Highness?" the maid asked, noticing Chloe's pale face. Just then, Alessandro walked past Chloe's cell, his cold eyes lingering on her. Chloe's heart raced. She prayed silently for him to move on, to leave her unnoticed. To her relief, Alessandro turned away, but the fear remained. He could change his mind at any moment. Later, Chloe found herself tied to a horse, dragged along with the other prisoners. "Walk faster. Anyone who falls will be killed," a soldier barked, as they marched for hours. Exhausted, Chloe reflected on her life. Her first life had ended suddenly, cut short by a car accident at the age of 35. She had never achieved her dreams, despite becoming a doctor after years of hard work. Now in this second life, her struggles continued. Born to a slave mother from a foreign land, Chloe was abandoned as a baby at an apothecary, left to survive in a harsh, unforgiving world. Chloe was reborn in the Elpasa kingdom during the Middle Ages, carrying memories of her previous life. In her first life, she hadn't accomplished anything, so despite being born a slave in this one, she felt grateful for the second chance. She learned to read and write despite the challenges her status presented, and lived a simple, content life. However, everything changed when at 23, the king of Elpasa, who she had never met, appeared and claimed to be her father. He took her to the palace and gave her the name Beatrice. Her new status as a princess didn't last long. Gilbert, the king's wealthy friend, asked for her hand in marriage, and rather than offer one of his legitimate daughters, the king gave Chloe to him. The next 2 years with Gilbert were a nightmare, filled with misery and regret. As Chloe began to think that even death might be preferable, the Empire attacked Elpasa, changing the course of her life yet again. Captured by the Empire's forces, Chloe reflected on her fate. "If I were a legitimate princess, I would have been executed with the others," she thought. Though relieved to be rid of Gilbert, she quickly realized that the life of a war slave was even more brutal than she had imagined. After days of marching, they finally arrived in the capital of the Nesteros Empire, its grandeur overwhelming her. "Elpasa's capital can't compare to this," she marveled. As they entered, a man called out her name. "You'll be serving the Cupido family of General Evan. Wait at the lodge until you're assigned a position," he instructed, untying her. Chloe, no longer treated as a princess, thought, "It's better this way. My title would only cause me trouble." Yet the memory of Rio's threats still haunted her, making her shudder. Determined to leave her past behind, she made a decision. In the slaves' quarters, Chloe took a pair of scissors and cut her hair. "I don't want any man's attention. From today, I'll erase my past as a princess," she resolved. Chloe threw herself into her new life as a common slave. When a maid ordered her to clean a desk, Chloe complied cheerfully, embracing her new role. "From now on, I'll live as Chloe, just an ordinary slave," she thought, feeling a strange sense of relief and joy as she focused on her work. Alessandro's strained relationship with his father is painfully obvious, especially during his title coronation, where they barely interacted. This tension makes things difficult for his butler, Aaron, who receives a letter from the emperor requesting Alessandro's presence for dinner. Alessandro, immersed in his book, refuses the invitation without hesitation. Aaron tries to convince him, reminding him of his obligations, including the upcoming royal battle tournament and the emperor's announcement to arrange his marriage within the year. Alessandro is frustrated by his father's interference, sarcastically telling Aaron to report that he has fallen in love with one of the royal guards, though Aaron finds the suggestion unbelievable. Meanwhile, Chloe, relieved by her assignment to the medical room for lighter work, stumbles upon a messy storage room for medicine. Drawing from her past experience as an apothecary, she decides to organize and clean the room. After finishing, Chloe is caught by Sir Jorge, the deputy chief of the medical wing. Though initially upset about her unauthorized entry, he is stunned to see the room neatly arranged and medicine sorted. Chloe, fearing punishment, nervously apologizes, but Sir Jorge, impressed by her work, questions if she did it all herself. Chloe knew she would be punished regardless of what she said, but she chose to tell the truth. She explained that she worked at an apothecary before and couldn't help but clean the storage room after seeing the mess. Sir Jorge was skeptical, He wondered how a slave, who supposedly couldn't even read, managed to organize the largest medicine storage in the empire, which contained foreign medicines as well. Surprised, Sir Georges asked how Chloe knew what to do. Chloe confessed that she could read and had organized the medicines she recognized, setting aside the ones she didn't. Shocked by this revelation, Sir Georges asked if she could also write. Chloe confirmed she had learned both while studying herbal medicine. Though impressed, he reprimanded her for organizing the room without permission and stated that she should expect a punishment, likely jail time. Chloe accepted her fate, inwardly relieved that it wasn't worse. When Sir Georges asked her name, she hesitated, almost revealing her true identity as Princess Beatrice, but decided to go by Chloe instead. Meanwhile, Alessandro practiced swordsmanship outside his castle, haunted by painful memories of his mother. He recalled her warmth turning into hatred when she lashed out at his father, blaming him for Alessandro's birth. The emotional turmoil fueled his intense training, but he stopped abruptly, trying to regain composure by pouring water over himself. Inside, Aaron approached him, urging him to greet Lady Clara Bandoras, the daughter of a duke, who had been waiting for over an hour. Alessandro, disinterested, coldly questioned why he should care, leaving Aaron frustrated. Lady Clara had visited 10 times already, but Alessandro's indifference remained. Aaron delivered the news to Lady Clara politely, who responded casually, accepting his excuse without complaint, though the tension was palpable. Clara Bandoras watched Alessandro from the garden, mesmerized by his built physique, dark brown hair, and icy blue eyes. The rumors about the Grand Duke's beauty were true, and Clara, daughter of one of the noblest families in the empire, was smitten ever since they met at a riding arena the previous year. She saw Alessandro as the perfect man for her, both physically and socially. Though she was known for being a social butterfly, her daily visits to Alessandro's estate made Aaron wonder if she was trying to mark her territory. Clara, however, remained determined to win Alessandro's affection, thinking silently to herself as she admired the roses. That night, Sir Horde lay restless, troubled by thoughts of Chloe's ability to organize the medicine storage so accurately. He found it hard to believe that a slave could possess such knowledge, especially about foreign medicines from Elpasa. Jolted awake by his thoughts, he left his home, ignoring his wife's concern, intent on testing Chloe's medical knowledge. In her cell, Chloe sat calmly, despite the fear of being imprisoned. She reflected on her hardships and wondered if her difficult life as a slave was somehow connected to her previous life's regrets. Her thoughts were interrupted by Sir Georges, who entered her cell. He asked her if she understood her wrongdoing, to which she replied sadly that she did. Georges, however, had other motives for visiting. He presented a box of herbs and medicines, challenging Chloe to identify their uses. Chloe, excited to finally use her 20 years of medical experience, answered each question with accuracy. She even shared insights that impressed Jorge, who took notes throughout the night. As the dawn approached, Jorge marveled at Chloe's deep understanding of medicine, especially from Elpasa. When asked how she knew so much, Chloe explained that she had worked as a slave in an apothecary in Elpasa's capital for over 20 years. Jorge was astounded by her knowledge and skill, which rivaled that of a doctor. Though her status as a slave complicated things, Jorge couldn't ignore her abilities. As morning broke, a guard arrived to remind Jorge that it was time to distribute breakfast to the prisoners. Realizing they had spoken until sunrise, Jorge made a decision. Despite her status as a war slave, Chloe's knowledge was undeniable. He ordered the guard to release her immediately. Seeing her as far more than just a slave, now free, Chloe stood before Sir Jorge in the mansion, her mind racing with possibilities. Is he going to have me clean the storage? She wondered, and watching him as he pondered over his next decision. Sir Jorge, however, had a much grander plan in mind. We can't waste such a talent, he thought. Even if we can't change her social status, making use of her skills will benefit the empire. From this day forward, you will write a book on the classification of medicine, Sir Georges announced. A book? Chloe asked, surprised. Yes, I want to know the effects of every drug in here. I want you to document them in writing and deliver your findings to me, he instructed. Sir, it's such an important task, Chloe said, a little taken aback by the responsibility. What do you think? Can you do it? he asked, looking at her expectantly. Yes, sir. If you'll allow me, she replied, excitement building inside her. As Chloe began her work, the task felt familiar, almost like returning to her days at the apothecary. So it's basically a graduation thesis. It's like I've gone back to those happy days, she thought, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. I knew it, Sir Georges thought, watching her write diligently. She must have attained a high level of education. She is exactly the kind of talent we need for our research. In addition to her research, Sir Georges gave Chloe another task, caring for Lady Aina, the young daughter of Duke Capito, who suffered from insomnia. Chloe, filled with compassion for the girl's struggle, and quickly assessed that the insomnia could be congenital. Perhaps aromatherapy will help, she thought, recalling how it had aided her through difficult times. She prepared a soothing blend of essential oils, and after a week of treatment, Lady Anna began to improve. You know the oil you made me, Chloe. It smells so nice. I think it's relieving my headache, Lady Anna said happily. I'm so happy to hear that, Chloe replied with a smile. I feel sleepy already, Anna murmured, yawning as she drifted off. Visiting the Duke's mansion every day can be stressful, but seeing Lady Anna get better is so gratifying, Chloe thought. It gave her a sense of peace amid her complex life. Meanwhile, Alessandro went horse riding one sunny afternoon, pausing at the edge of a cliff. As he gazed at the height, memories of a conversation with his father flooded back. Why do you keep refusing the throne? His father, the emperor, had asked. I made it clear from the beginning, Alessandro had replied. Instead of sitting on the throne, I want to be part of the royal guard and unify the continent. That was a decade ago when the empire wasn't as powerful. Things are different now, his father had argued. I've done my part. Please stop telling me otherwise, Alessandro had said firmly. You won't win this time, Alessandro thought, standing at the cliff's edge. Suddenly, Evan caught up to him, panting. Your Grace, did you really just jump from a cliff to win a bet? He asked, his voice shaky. You mean the thing you couldn't do, so you turned around? Alessandro replied, smirking. It wasn't me, it was my horse. It got scared, Evan said defensively. That's a pathetic excuse, Alessandro retorted. Please, Your Grace, take care of yourself. I nearly had a heart attack when you jumped from that cliff, Evan pleaded. If I died falling off a horse, it would just mean I was never meant for the throne. My father would finally be convinced, Alessandro said calmly. Evan, disturbed by Alessandro's nonchalance, couldn't help but think. Sometimes it feels like His Grace will disappear without warning one day. While others would mourn his absence, I'd accept it, as if I'd known it would happen all along. No, what am I thinking? He quickly pushed the thought away and decided to challenge Alessandro instead. Evan charged his horse ahead, shouting back, That was a practice round. If I win this one, you owe me a favor. Life is a cycle of giving up some things to gain others. Perhaps one day, His Grace will find a reason to live, Evan thought, hoping for a future where Alessandro's indifference faded. Men bathe in aroma oil as well? Aaron asked Chloe as he arrived at the mansion. Yes, but it's a different type of oil than what is used in the Empire. They don't smell of flowers, Chloe replied. What do they smell like? I don't trust aromatherapy, he said, clearly skeptical. Trust me, it works. I love it. Brother, you have to try it. Anna chimed in, eager to convince him. It'll make your whole body feel at peace. It takes away all your worries. Aaron hesitated. I've been stressed lately. I even used Anna as an excuse to leave work early today. Can this really relieve all my stress? Despite his doubts, Anna's insistence eventually wore him down. Soon Aaron was soaking in the aromatic bath. Am I in heaven? He thought, surprised at how pleasant it felt. The scent was subtle, like a light breeze in a forest. It's nice that the smell isn't too strong, he thought, starting to relax. His mind wandered to the usual sources of his stress, the Emperor, the Grand Duke, and Lady Bandora's. Forget those selfish people, he decided, letting the water soothe his thoughts. Sir Cupido, is everything all right? Chloe asked, standing nearby. Aaron eyed her cautiously. What did this slave put in the water? Though suspicious, he brushed it off. You can leave me alone, he said. When the bath was over, Aaron felt oddly light. Whoa, my body still feels like it's floating, he thought. Anna was waiting for him with a tray. Brother, try this. You should drink something cold and sweet after an aroma bath, she said. Is this part of the treatment? He asked, confused. No, but just try it, she urged. He took a sip, his eyes widening in surprise as he gulped down the rest. This must be happiness, he thought, feeling a brief moment of peace. Meanwhile, back in the capital, a crisis had occurred. "Sir, you must come with me. General Evan has been injured from a fall," a maid exclaimed, rushing into Sir George's study. "What happened?" Sir George asked, alarmed. "His Grace brought the general here himself. You need to see them immediately," she urged. In Evan's room, the general lay in bed, his leg bandaged. "I have no words," Evan said, defeated as Alessandro sat by his side. "I've ordered your horse to be executed tomorrow," Alessandro said coldly. "Captain?" Evan flinched in shock. "What's so surprising? A horse that drops its owner must be executed," Alessandro responded, his tone unyielding. Evan stared in disbelief at his reaction. Chloe, back in the medicine room, had fallen asleep while writing. Her dream took her back to her past life, memories of telling an orphanage worker about her life in Korea, her terrible marriage to Gilbert, and Alessandro's cold words when he ordered her execution haunted her sleep. Jolting awake, drenched in sweat, Chloe's heart raced. "Where am I?" "The medicine room. I must have fallen asleep while working," she realized. That was a horrible dream, she thought, trying to shake off the feeling. Just then, the door opened and Sir George entered. "Chloe, you're here," he said calmly. Sir George is impressed by Chloe's intelligence and work ethic after seeing the many well-written documents she produced in a short time. Though tired, Chloe listens as Sir George praises her and suggests they take a walk in the garden. While strolling, they are interrupted by a maid who informs Sir George about General Cupido's condition. The general had been injured when his horse, Hall, collided with a tree. Chloe expresses concern about the horse's fate, but Sir George explains that the horse has a short reprieve. At the stables, Alessandro, who has a deep bond with Hall, visits the horse and reflects on their history. He recounts how Hall saved his life in battle and how much he owes the horse. However, Alessandro feels conflicted about punishing Hall for the accident that injured Duke Evan Cupido, a soldier he holds dear. When Sir George and Chloe arrive at the stables, Chloe is struck by how luxurious the horses' living quarters are. They observe the weakened Hall and discuss the possibility that the horse drank contaminated water from a mountain near the capital, which is known for its poisonous plants. Sir George encourages Chloe to use her knowledge of herbs to investigate the area, and she agrees, determined to return with answers. As Chloe ascended the mountain, she marveled at the abundance of medicinal herbs growing around her. Recognizing many of the plants, she was excited at the thought of sharing her discovery with Sir George. When she finally reached the pond where Hall had reportedly drank, she observed the nearby plants. Among them, she spotted the hopping plant, a species known to cause animals to lose their sense of direction and suffer from nosebleeds. Chloe deduced that this must have been the cause of Hall's wild behavior. Determined to find a cure, Chloe recalled a flower called the anchor flower, which usually grows at high altitudes. Climbing higher, she found the flower and collected a large amount, though she had forgotten to bring a bag. Deciding to carry the plants in her pants, Chloe made her way down the mountain. At the bottom, a man tasked with watching her was resting. Startled when Chloe suddenly appeared, he reacted with surprise and curiosity about the bulging state of her pants. Chloe explained her discovery of a possible cure for Hall, but the man seemed skeptical of her involvement as a mere slave. With no bag to offer her, the man escorted Chloe back to the stables, though he maintained a dismissive attitude towards her. Upon arrival at the stables, the stable master initially refused Chloe entry, treating her poorly due to her status as a slave. However, the man escorting her introduced himself as Triger, the captain's coachman, and vouched for Chloe's presence, convincing the stable master to let them inside. Once inside, Chloe approached Hall's cage, nervously trying to offer the weakened horse the plants she had gathered. As she reached into her pants to retrieve them, the stable master, suspicious of her actions, grabbed the plants and questioned whether Sir George had really sent her. He locked her inside the cage, leaving Chloe trapped and frozen in fear. That evening, Alessandro returned to the stable, where Chloe remained seated on the floor of Hall's cage, anxiously waiting to feed the horse the medicinal herbs. Hall suddenly became alert and rose, catching Chloe off guard. The coachman arrived and explained to Alessandro that he had locked Chloe up for attempting to feed Hall an unknown plant. As Chloe looked up in fear, she realized it was Alessandro, the man she had been hiding from. Alessandro opened the gate and approached Hall, gently rubbing the horse's head, which responded to his touch. Chloe, observing this, wondered about the deep bond between the two, realizing Hall might actually belong to Alessandro, not the general. The stablemaster, in a stern voice, demanded that Chloe explain her actions. Trembling, she hesitated but gathered the courage to respond. She introduced herself as a slave studying medicine under Deputy Chief Jorge Nanapa and explained that she had identified a poisonous plant that Hall had likely consumed. Her only intention was to cure the horse with a medicinal herb. The stablemaster, furious, accused her of lying, but Alessandro calmly asked if she could truly cure the horse. Confident despite her fear, Chloe affirmed she could. Alessandro, coldly but with authority, gave her the chance to prove herself, warning that if the horse died, she would pay with her life. Terrified yet resolute, Chloe steeled herself. This was her chance, and she was determined to make it happen. When Alessandro ordered her to feed Hall the herb, Chloe reached into her pants, shocking both Alessandro and the stablemaster. She explained that, lacking a bag, she had no choice but to carry the herbs in her pants. The stablemaster berated her for her lack of shame, but Chloe ignored him, focusing on her task. As she carefully presented the plant to Hall, Alessandro watched her closely, contemplating her strange nature. Though he had always distrusted women, seeing them as deceptive, something about Chloe intrigued him. Begging Hall to eat the plant, Chloe remained focused on her mission, aware that her life and the horse's depended on this moment. Alessandro continued observing her with curiosity, silently acknowledging that she was different from the others in his life. As Chloe anxiously watched the horse refuse to eat, she grew desperate. Thinking quickly, she gently rubbed the plant to release its aroma, hoping to restore Hall's appetite. Bending down again, she softly urged the horse to eat. Hall sniffed the plant and finally took a bite, but in the process, it bit her hand. Chloe winced in pain but continued feeding Hall, carefully avoiding its teeth this time. The stablemaster criticized her lack of experience, but Alessandro remained calm, observing the situation silently. Despite the pain, Chloe managed to feed Hall all of the medicinal plants she had gathered. She informed Alessandro that they would have to wait and monitor Hall's condition to determine if the treatment worked. Alessandro, skeptical but intrigued, pressed her on how soon Hall could recover. Chloe nervously assured him that if the horse improved within a week, it might be able to run again in 2. Alessandro, his words filled with cold warning, told her that she had better be telling the truth before walking away. After they left, Chloe collapsed from exhaustion. The stablemaster coldly informed her she would be held responsible for the horse's health and locked her inside the stable. Chloe requested that the stablemaster tell Lady Anna of the Cupido family that she would be unable to visit, and he agreed, walking away without recognizing her true identity. Alone again, Chloe breathed a sigh of relief. She reflected on her luck, musing how unlikely it was that anyone would recognize her as Princess Beatrice, once adorned with long hair and fine dresses. She focused on Hall, who was breathing easier now, and softly encouraged the horse to recover so it could save both of their lives. Chloe then made herself a bed from hay and drifted off to sleep, determined to gather more plants later with permission. Meanwhile, preparations for the upcoming royal battle competition were underway. This prestigious event, held in the Nosteros Empire, was meant to select and train future knights and soldiers. While most looked forward to the ceremony, Aaron, who was swamped with royal duties, felt overwhelmed. He was particularly frustrated with the announcement of Grand Duke Graham's engagement, which had caused a surge of attention around the Grand Duke. Aaron found it difficult to reconcile the Duke's distrust of women with the sudden engagement, and the endless stream of letters from admirers only added to his stress. As Aaron slumped in his seat, exhausted, he pondered how to deal with the pressure and the elusive slave he had been waiting on, lamenting his growing responsibilities amidst the chaos. The next morning, Trigger followed Chloe up the mountain in search of more herbs for Hall. Tired from the long climb, he couldn't help but wonder how much farther they had to go. "Who are you, really?" he asked, noticing Chloe's cheerful demeanor despite the hard trek. Chloe responded calmly, "Oh, I used to work at an apothecary as a slave. I learned a lot there, so I got to work for the deputy chief here." Triger, still suspicious, thought to himself, "She's treated like something more than just a slave." He recalled the slave master's anxious warning before they had set off. "If that slave runs away, we're both dead. Tie her up if you need to." Triger smirked inwardly at the memory. How does he expect me to tie her up and drag her around? Coward, he thought. "We're almost at the top," Chloe announced, pointing upward. When they reached the summit, Triger was taken aback by the stunning view. "Whoa! I've never seen anything like this," he thought, momentarily lost in the beauty of the surroundings. While Triger admired the scene, Chloe quickly busied herself gathering more herbs. "I found it," she exclaimed, uncovering a lush bush of medicinal plants. "I need to collect as much as I can. Hall, I'm coming with all the medicine you need," she thought happily, filling her bag. Once they returned to the stable, Chloe dashed inside, the bag of herbs slung over her shoulder. "Hall," she called out softly as she rushed into the horse's cage. "The medicine must be working. I'm so relieved." She fed Hall, who looked visibly healthier, smiling to herself as the horse ate. "Chloe, are you all right?" came a concerned voice from behind. It was Sir George, who looked worried as he entered the stable. "Deputy Chief," Chloe called out, her face lighting up. She quickly recounted her encounter with the Grand Duke and the efforts she had made to save Hall. "So you figured out which poisonous plant the horse ate and brought the cure as well?" Sir George asked, his voice tense with concern. "Yes," Chloe replied earnestly. "I wanted to save the horse as quickly as possible. I'm sorry I couldn't contact you." Sir George nodded, his expression softening as he glanced at Hall. The horse was noticeably better than the last time he'd seen it. "You've done well, Chloe." "Excited," Chloe added. "There are so many medicinal plants on Narusuan Mountain, far more than poisonous ones. I'd love to go back and record them if you'll allow me." Sir George smiled and placed his hand on her shoulder. "I trust you. Please make sure Hall recovers safely, and then we'll work on that book together." As Sir George left, he couldn't help but think about Chloe's dedication. She didn't just identify the problem, she brought the solution, and she has such a kind heart for animals. She'll make a great doctor, he mused with satisfaction. Inside the stable, Chloe, feeling at ease, began to think about her next steps. "I'll visit Lady Anna as soon as I'm free. She must be worried about me, and I'll continue classifying the medicine," she thought, trying to stay focused. That evening, Alessandro returned to the stable. He quietly stepped into Hall's cage, noticing Chloe fast asleep. "Shall I wake her, sir?" the stable master asked. "Leave her," Alessandro replied, his eyes lingering on Chloe. "The sun hasn't even set, and she's already asleep. Does she not realize her situation? I told her I'd kill her if Hall dies," he thought, observing her peaceful face. "The cure seems to be working, sir," the stable master remarked, as Hall walked over to Alessandro, looking much better than before. "Hall does seem healthier," Alessandro admitted inwardly. He had come to interrogate Chloe further, but seeing the improvement in his horse, he decided to hold off. He gently stroked Hall, his mind wandering back to the sleeping slave. "I'll come back later," he thought, walking away, yet unable to fully dismiss her from his thoughts. While horseback riding one evening, Alessandro Graham is informed by his aide, Aaron, that his father, the Emperor, has planned an engagement party for him. This frustrates Alessandro, as he has no desire to marry and sees the engagement as a political scheme. His thoughts drift back to his traumatic childhood, where his mother, in a moment of rage, held a sword to his neck and later died in a violent confrontation with his father, Duncan. The memory fuels his distaste for alliances forged through power and greed, like the one his parents pursued. Meanwhile, in his study, Emperor Duncan reads reports about his son's close relationships with members of the royal guard, particularly General Evan Copito and a young knight named Chris Senlo. These reports suggest Alessandro may have unusually intimate relationships with them, raising the emperor's suspicions. Though initially dismissive of these rumors, the emperor grows more puzzled and worried as he reads on. Calling his secretary, Humphrey, the emperor presents a hypothetical scenario about a beloved son wanting to leave for the desert with a woman he loves. When Humphrey gives a neutral response, Duncan sends her away, still conflicted about his own feelings toward Alessandro. On the day of the royal battle competition, Alessandro, indifferent to the cheers of the crowd, leaves the arena. Duke Bandoras, the father of his fiancée Clara, approaches him, asking if he will attend the banquet. Alessandro, cold and detached, rejects the idea and clarifies that the engagement was arranged by their families without his consent, urging Duke Bandoras to abandon any hopes tied to it. After dismissing Duke Bandoras and leaving the banquet, Alessandro walks away, fuming at the lengths people go to gain power, including using their own children in arranged marriages. As he heads toward the stables, he notices Chloe, fast asleep in the middle of the day. The stablemaster is surprised, explaining that she had promised to be awake, but Alessandro, while calm, is incredulous. Alessandro inspects Hall, the horse Chloe had been tending to, and is impressed by its rapid recovery. His thoughts shift to Chloe, who appears to be a foreign slave due to her hair color and accent. The stablemaster informs him that she works under the Cupido family, and that Sir Aaron Cupido had been inquiring about her frequently, demanding her return as soon as she was released. Alessandro finds this odd, questioning if Aaron has any improper interest in the young girl, but dismisses the idea, still puzzled by Aaron's insistence. Chloe stirs from her sleep briefly, but quickly turns away from them, ignoring Alessandro. Amused by her boldness, Alessandro decides to leave for the moment, but Chloe, though pretending to sleep, feels her heart race at his presence. The next morning, Chloe struggles to sleep, reflecting on her situation. The stablemaster tells her that Alessandro had visited again, checking on Hall. He advises her to greet him properly the next time he comes, to which Chloe agrees, though the thought of facing him makes her nervous. As she tends to Hall, she marvels at the horse's rapid recovery and wonders why Alessandro continues to visit every day. Chloe fears punishment for her previous behavior, but reassures herself that the Graham family, known for keeping promises, won't harm her as long as Hall continues to improve. Trigger surprises Chloe while observing Hall. He jokes about her being startled easily, like a rabbit, but notes the horse's remarkable recovery. Chloe smiles at his rough but kind demeanor, appreciating his help in gathering plants for Hall, despite his busy schedule preparing for the royal battle competition. As he teases her about leaving her behind, she rushes to catch up, feeling a bit more at ease. At the banquet, noblewomen whispered among themselves, wondering if Grand Duke Alessandro would make an appearance. One expressed doubt, mentioning the banquet was supposedly in his honor, yet he was nowhere to be seen. Another mentioned having heard rumors of his beauty, but never seeing him in person. Their conversation was interrupted by Clara Bandoras, Alessandro's fiancée, who reminded them of her engagement, smugly declaring herself the most beautiful and noble, thus the only one fit to be his wife. The two ladies, clearly tense, thought of her as the unpleasant butch of high society. Meanwhile, Aaron observed the situation, worried about Alessandro's absence. Despite urging him to attend, Alessandro was missing, leaving Aaron anxious that the Duke may have deliberately avoided the event. Back at the stables, Chloe contemplated whether Alessandro would visit. She had intended to stay awake after missing him during previous visits, but her fear of meeting him face to face, especially considering her true identity, left her hesitant. She wondered if he would even come so late, and as exhaustion crept in, she decided to sleep. Later that night, Alessandro arrived at the stables. He found the peaceful atmosphere comforting, a sharp contrast to the outside world. Upon discovering Chloe asleep once more, the stablemaster apologized, but Alessandro shrugged it off and asked for Hall's stable to be opened. The horse, now fully recovered, was energetic. Alessandro, impressed with the progress, questioned whether Hall was ready to run again, and the stablemaster confirmed. Alessandro inquired about Chloe, curious if anything unusual had occurred. The stablemaster chuckled, listing the strange things about Chloe: her large appetite, fearlessness in climbing Mount Nalrusuan, her knowledge of medicine, and her mysterious background. He also mentioned that Sir Aaron Cupido and Deputy Chief Yorv from the medical wing asked about her daily, which piqued Alessandro's curiosity. As Alessandro prepared to leave, he instructed the stablemaster to check if Hall was ready to run by the following day and report any oddities to General Evan. Stepping outside, Alessandro looked out toward the capital and its festivities, reflecting on a growing unease. Though peace had finally come to the empire, he couldn't shake the feeling that the upcoming battle ceremony might mark a significant turning point for the future. The next day, Alessandro sought more information about Chloe from Sir George, asking directly about the slave who was kept in the stables. Sir George, visibly taken aback, confirmed. Alessandro mentioned his plan to bring Chloe to the upcoming ceremony, which puzzled George, who had hoped to get her started on other tasks once Hall's treatment was completed. However, Alessandro's decision was final. Sir George, despite his disappointment, had no choice but to agree, though he couldn't hide his sadness. Noticing George's downcast expression, Alessandro thought he resembled a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. Alessandro then asked Georgie about his interest in Chloe. George explained that Chloe was exceptionally skilled, more so than many of the doctors in the empire, and had a remarkable understanding of medicinal plants. Georgia revealed that Chloe had been the one to discover the cause of Hall's poisoning and had also found the cure, surprising Alessandro by mentioning her name for the first time. Their conversation was interrupted when Aaron, Alessandro's butler, entered with an urgent message. Alessandro listened as Aaron whispered to him, while George mused on Aaron's background, noting that Aaron was the second son of the Cupido family, shunned by his family after rejecting his noble title to work as a butler. Despite this, George saw Aaron as a capable and respectful young man. Alessandro confirmed his decision to bring Chloe to the ceremony after the royal battle competition. George expressed hope that Chloe would be helpful, but Aaron reacted with surprise upon hearing Chloe's name, recognizing her as the small, boyish slave from the Cupido household who worked in the medicine room. Aaron, who had secretly planned to relax while Alessandro attended the ceremony, was now shocked that Chloe would accompany him. As Alessandro and George discussed Chloe's role, Aaron interrupted, suggesting that Chloe be assigned as Alessandro's personal maid instead. He argued that since Chloe had taken care of Anna at the Cupido mansion and was skilled at nursing and massages, she would be more useful attending to Alessandro's needs. Aaron's insistence clashed with George's hopes of having Chloe work in the medical wing, leading to a tense stare-down between the two men. Ultimately, Alessandro decided to leave Chloe's assignment to Aaron, which left Aaron triumphant and Georgie disappointed. Observing their reactions, Alessandro was intrigued by how valuable both men seemed to find Chloe. Later that day, as Alessandro approached his room, he sensed someone's presence inside. His expression turned cold as he opened the door to find Clara Bandoras sitting in his room, smiling warmly at him. "You're home late, Your Grace," she said, her voice sweet yet unsettling. As Clara Bandoras sat in his room, flushed with desire and delusion, Alessandro remained cold and indifferent. She had crossed a line, entering his private quarters without invitation, but instead of feeling remorse, she was lost in admiration of his beauty. Alessandro, however, was unmoved, walking past her as if she didn't exist. When Clara Bandoras tried to appeal to him, speaking of the time she had waited for him and the moments she had spent hoping to see him, Alessandro's response was icy. "You must have not learned your manners," he said, his words cutting through her pride. Yet even this insult did little to deter her. She clung to him, speaking of the mansion he had once promised to the woman he would choose, thinking she could win him over with her charms. But Alessandro remained firm, making it clear that her expectations meant nothing to him. Growing desperate, Clara Bandoras embraced him and attempted to seduce him further, but her attempts were met with swift and brutal rejection. Alessandro pushed her onto the bed, asserting control in a way that shocked her. When she tried to draw him in for a kiss, his response was harsh. He held her down, resisting her advances. Confused and humiliated, she tried again, only to be met with more force as Alessandro's grip tightened. The situation shifted from seductive to humiliating for Clara Bandoras as Alessandro, treating her as a child without discipline, spanked her sharply. Her cries of pain and surprise filled the room as she realized the gravity of her situation. She had never been treated this way, certainly not by anyone of Alessandro's stature, and certainly not since childhood. Her pride shattered. She was helpless against him. When Alessandro was finished, he lifted her effortlessly and set her down by the door, his cold demeanor unshaken. "If you see me again, I will not treat you like a lady," he warned, his voice filled with finality. The humiliation was too much for Clara Bandoras, who ran out of the room in tears, her dignity in tatters. As the door closed, Alessandro's disgust was palpable. "Any woman can visit my house? Father, have you finally lost it?" he thought to himself, shaking his head at the absurdity of what had just transpired. Clara Bendora's was no exception. His disdain for the situation was clear. She, like many others, had tried to impose her will on him, but Alessandro would not be controlled by anyone, no matter how beautiful or powerful they thought they were. Gilbert's frustration was boiling over at his manner. Slamming his hand against the handrail, he cursed Alessandro under his breath. "Arrogant bastard! Does he think he could have secured Elpasa so easily without me? And yet he dares to send a servant to award me my title." The sting of being turned away from Alessandro's door time and again still festered within him, amplifying his anger. He knew Duncan Graham, the new emperor, and his son Alessandro, the empire's heroes, held untouchable power. What if I'm framed for revolting? What if there's a civil uprising? Anxiety gnawed at him, and a plan began to form. "I'll use this marriage as an excuse to contact the surrounding fiefs. As for Beatrice, she must be dead by now. But that's no longer my concern," he thought bitterly, his mind whirling. Meanwhile, in the stables, Chloe was reeling from unexpected news. Trigger had just informed her about her inclusion in the royal ceremony. "Excuse me? What did you just say?" she asked, stunned. "I said you're going to the ceremony. You'll be the Grand Duke's personal servant. It's a great honor. His Grace is a very charismatic man," Trigger repeated with a grin as Chloe, mid-bite, paused in disbelief. "The royal ceremony? The one where the battle competition winners patrol the Empire? And I'll be serving that man?" Chloe thought, feeling dread settle in. Her mind raced. "But Hall is all better now. I thought I'd be free." Panic gnawed at her, but there was no time to protest as Trigger pulled her along. Later, at the Grand Duke's mansion, Chloe stood nervously in front of Aaron. "As you've heard, you'll be serving His Grace during this year's ceremony. It's a significant and honorable task, so I expect you to give your best," Aaron instructed. Chloe's heart sank further. "Why is this happening to me?" she thought in despair, unsure of what lay ahead. A knock on the door interrupted the tense moment. "Did you ask for me, Sir Aaron?" The head maid, Sandra, entered, bowing respectfully. "Welcome, Sandra. This is Chloe, and she'll be serving His Grace," Aaron said warmly, prompting Chloe to bow in greeting. "Chloe, you'll need to learn everything about serving His Grace from Sandra before tomorrow's departure," Aaron ordered. Chloe nodded, though fear gnawed at her insides. "I've been pretending to be asleep because I was too scared to look at him, and now I'm going to be his personal maid? This is worse than facing a hungry tiger," she thought, shivering. Sandra wasted no time in briefing Chloe on her new responsibilities. "His Grace doesn't like physical contact. You must not disturb him during his bath or sleep," Sandra explained as they walked through the mansion. Chloe, lost in her thoughts, barely registered the instructions. "Are you listening?" Sandra snapped, breaking Chloe out of her daze. "Yes, when preparing his bath," Chloe began, only to be interrupted. "Get it together. We will all pay the price if you make a mistake," Sandra scolded, her tone sharp. Chloe, feeling more terrified by the moment, promised she wouldn't make any errors. "Good. His Grace is not someone you want to upset, so make sure everything is flawless," Sandra warned as they continued their tour of the mansion. Chloe's nerves were frayed. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, trying to sound confident despite her racing heart. "Your main duties are to prepare his clothes, make his bed, and clean his sword," Sandra continued. Chloe processed her words, thinking, "So I'll basically be doing chores all day. I've never worked as a maid before. What if I mess up?" Her thoughts turned to escape. "Maybe it's better if I don't do so well," she mused, but Sandra, as if reading her mind, paused and turned to her. "If you're thinking you'd rather get fired because this is too much work, don't. Unless you wish to be beheaded," Sandra said coldly, causing Chloe to gulp hard. "Yes, ma'am," Chloe replied, terrified at the prospect of failure and knowing she had no choice but to succeed. "Chloe, come in. Long time no see," Lady Anna called softly, welcoming her. "Hello, Lady Anna, how've you been?" Chloe asked, a gentle smile on her face as she saw Anna sitting comfortably. "I'm so glad she seems to be doing better," Chloe thought inwardly. "I thought you'd be busy preparing for the ceremony. How did you manage to visit?" Anna asked, excitement in her voice. "I begged the head maid to let me slip away. I wanted to say goodbye since I won't be able to see you for a while," Chloe explained. "I see. Thanks for coming," Anna said, her expression softening. I'm jealous that you get to travel to the Empire with all those charming knights. Chloe chuckled softly, but before she could respond, Anna leaned in closer. But Chloe, she whispered, her tone shifting, I'm telling you this because I'm worried about you, so keep it to yourself. Huh? What is it? Chloe asked, looking surprised and concerned. My maid's friend knows Lady Bandora's maid, and she said that His Grace harassed Lady Clara, Anna whispered. Harassed? He did that? Chloe's mouth fell open in shock. Yes, and there's more. I also heard that he enjoys beating women, Anna added, her face grim. No way, Chloe gasped, fear creeping into her heart. Hush, my brother would kill me if he found out I told you this, Anna warned, clasping Chloe's hands affectionately. Oh, okay, Chloe stuttered, her thoughts racing. I heard that's why he went off to war so much. So be careful, Chloe, Anna urged, her voice full of concern. The ceremony began, and the lively crowd cheered as the knights set off. Chloe walked beside Alessandro, her mind still replaying Anna's warnings. I can't believe a man like him would do such a thing. He looks like Prince Charming, she thought, unable to help but notice his perfect features, his dark eyebrows, sharp jawline, and plump lips. No, now's not the time to stare. I need to keep my guard up, Chloe reminded herself, shaking her head. Despite her resolve, she caught sight of Sir George in the crowd, who waved at her. Safe travels, Chloe, Sir George shouted. Thank you. I'll be back soon, Chloe called back, bowing as a smile spread across her face. What's the point of worrying about something I can't change, she thought, feeling a bit more at ease. I am pretty lucky, she mused, glancing at Alessandro, who was observing her silently. They continued their journey for hours until the evening. Chloe's feet ached, and she was exhausted from the long march. How much longer do we need to walk? We only took one short break for lunch, and I'm getting so tired, she thought. We shall end today's march here, General Evan announced, and the knights cheered in relief. Thank goodness, Chloe thought, watching as the knights began to set up camp. Before she could rest, a maid approached her. Hey, you're new, right? The maid asked. Yes, Chloe replied, curious. The tent for His Grace is ready. Go make his bed and bring him a hot towel later tonight, the maid instructed. Thank you for letting me know, Chloe said, bowing gratefully. I'm Heidi. I'm Sir Wilder's maid, she said, introducing herself. By the way, are you a boy or a girl? Oh, I'm a girl, Chloe replied, relieved she still appeared boyish despite her long hair. I thought His Grace brought you because you're a boy. Well, you should get going now, Heidi said before hurrying off. Chloe entered Alessandro's tent to prepare his bed. This place is pretty clean and simple, she thought as she laid out the soft blanket. I'm so tired from staying up last night, she mused, rubbing her hand on the blanket. Hopefully, he still thinks I'm at Capito Mansion, Chloe thought nervously, remembering the rumors Anna had shared. Chloe becomes tense after seeing Alessandro at the entrance of his tent. She hurriedly apologizes and offers to bring his dinner, while Alessandro silently passes by, making her feel even more anxious. Chloe leaves to get his meal, breathing a sigh of relief once she's outside. Alessandro, meanwhile, observes her calm demeanor, appreciating that she's not as bothersome as other women, and assumes she must be competent if Aaron assigned her. When Chloe returns with dinner, she watches Alessandro eat, admiring his graceful manners. She offers to help pour his wine, but Alessandro unexpectedly grabs her hand, telling her to eat during his meals from now on. Chloe takes this as a sign that he prefers being left alone, which she can relate to from her own past as a princess. After dinner, Alessandro walks to the stables and notices Chloe drinking water meant for the horses. He realizes she hasn't had a drink all day and chooses to ignore her, thinking it's better to pretend he didn't see. Chloe, feeling refreshed, enjoys the water and is relieved she didn't have to ask Alessandro for it. On her way back to his tent, she runs into Heidi, who startles her with a sharp greeting. Adding a sense of unease to the encounter, Heidi comments on how Chloe looks even more like a boy in the dark, making Chloe blush and laugh nervously. Though Chloe finds Heidi's friendliness a bit unsettling at first, she answers Heidi's questions about being a slave, and the conversation turns light. Heidi hands her 2 bottles of wine for Alessandro, and Chloe begins to feel that Heidi isn't so bad after all. Chloe rushes to Alessandro's tent, only to find it empty. While she places the bottles on the table, she unexpectedly bumps into Alessandro, who silently walks past her, causing her to blush in embarrassment. Alessandro quickly drinks the wine, and as Chloe watches nervously, he tells her not to wake him in the morning, requesting a simple breakfast. As he begins to undress, Chloe's face reddens at the sight of his muscular build. and she hastily excuses herself, leaving the tent in a flustered state. Alessandro chuckles at Chloe's behavior, noting how she's like a scared puppy and remembering how he once threatened her life. Deciding to visit General Evan, he steps outside, but pauses when he sees Chloe inspecting some plants. Curious about her actions, he quietly watches as she identifies a wood sorrel and contemplates tasting it. Before she can, Alessandro swiftly grabs her hand, stopping her in surprise. Chloe stammers nervously as Alessandro scolds her, assuming she's eating grass out of hunger. Bowing quickly, she assures him she won't, though internally she's mortified by the misunderstanding. As soon as he walks away, her stomach growls loudly, adding to her embarrassment. Chloe panics, hoping Alessandro didn't hear it, but he simply walks off, feeling sorry for her, thinking she's that hungry. The next morning, Chloe serves Alessandro breakfast and offers to prepare his tea. Suddenly, he asks for her name, catching her off guard. Panicked, Chloe wonders if he's recognized her true identity, but she responds calmly, telling him her name is Chloe. Alessandro then gestures to a drinking horn on the table, telling her it's hers. Perplexed, Chloe hesitantly accepts the gift. He dismisses her, telling her to inform Evan they will start the march in an hour. Outside the tent, Chloe inspects the ornate horn, baffled by the unexpected gift. She feels relieved, knowing she won't have to drink water from the horses anymore, but she remains uncertain about Alessandro's intentions. Meanwhile, in the Bandora's mansion, Clara reminisces about her intense encounter with Alessandro, recalling the strength of his arms and hands. Though she initially resisted, Clara now feels captivated by him, even planning to approach his father while Alessandro is away on his journey. As the caravan continues their march, they enter the territory of Count Lambuth. Chloe marvels at the beauty of the wide, well-maintained fields. Her attention shifts to Alessandro, and she finds herself reconsidering her earlier impressions of him. There seems to be more to him than she initially thought. Perhaps he might even be a good person. A few days ago, Chloe had gone to Alessandro's tent to seek permission to enter. He gave a simple yes as he dressed, and she instinctively thought it was her duty to assist him. However, Alessandro stopped her, telling her to leave it, and that he was not her master. Confused by his words, Chloe wondered if it was because she belonged to the Cupido family. Alessandro then instructed her not to call him master anymore, causing her to quickly adjust and agree to call him Your Grace. Like everyone else, she thought to herself how easy he was to serve, relieved that her initial fears about him hadn't materialized. Later, as Chloe took lunch to his tent, she overheard knights gossiping. One knight commented on how women were eager to meet Alessandro at the ceremony, but he never showed up. Another knight pointed out how much Alessandro valued honor and integrity, while praising his good looks. Chloe reflected on these conversations, realizing that even though rumors circulated about Alessandro's harsh behavior, many people who worked closely with him saw him as charming, beautiful, and kind. This added to Chloe's conflicting thoughts about him, especially as she also found herself impressed by his looks and humility. That evening, Alessandro sat in his tent reading a letter from Sir Jorge. The letter requested that Alessandro allow Chloe to write and draw about medicinal herbs, a request that left Alessandro surprised. He found it hard to believe that a young slave like Chloe could read and write, despite her impressive handling of Hall's illness. His thoughts were interrupted by Evan's arrival. Alessandro showed Evan a blood-stained letter from the advance squad, which had arrived 3 days earlier from the northwest, an unusual location considering their current route. Alessandro shared his concerns about certain noblemen gathering more soldiers than reported, except for Marquess Kendall Burnett. The Marquess's territory lay to the northwest, and he had blamed reduced taxes on bandit activity. Alessandro suspected something more was at play, but asked Evan to keep the matter quiet for now, while further investigations continued. As Alessandro pondered the political scheming surrounding them, Chloe's voice interrupted his thoughts. She had brought his wine, and Alessandro allowed her to enter, curious about the claims Jorge had made regarding her skills. Chloe entered the tent, carrying a tray with 2 bottles of wine, and Alessandro's curiosity deepened. Chloe enters Alessandro's tent to deliver wine and asks if he needs anything else. He instructs her to polish his armor, even though she already did it earlier. Nervous but compliant, she begins polishing in the tent while Alessandro watches her closely, noticing her maturity and different accent. He then asks if she knows Deputy Chief Jorge and if she can read and write, which makes Chloe uneasy. She admits that she can, fearing his reaction, and he observes how scared she is around him. Alessandro then questions if she feels uncomfortable in his presence, and startled by the question, Chloe accidentally drops his armor. He comments that her actions speak louder than words, sensing her fear. At that moment, Chris Senlo, one of Alessandro's knights, enters with wine and food, offering to drink with Alessandro. Grateful for the interruption, Chloe asks to leave. "May I leave, Your Grace?" Chloe asked, sensing the change in atmosphere. "You may," Alessandro said. "Yes, Your Grace," she replied, hurrying out of the tent. "Did you beat her or something, Your Grace?" Chris remarked, watching her leave. "Is it Your Grace or Captain? Pick one," Alessandro said, sounding serious. "Not like you care." "Drink up," Chris said, pouring them each a glass. After a few glasses, Chris shared his frustration. "The old man wants me to come back. First my father, and now my grandfather. And now they say I need a wife if I want to see the ceremony through. How does that make sense?" "Do you have anyone in mind?" Alessandro asked. "How could I? I've been rotting on the battlefields for the last decade. You know that." Chris shook his head. "They've even tried faking illnesses to guilt-trip me. Now, they're saying they'll find the most beautiful woman in the capital for me to marry." Alessandro laughed. "You've got a lot on your plate." "I'd rather be on the battlefield," Chris muttered, raising his glass. "Let's drink." Outside, Chloe calms her nerves, worried Alessandro might suspect her true identity as the Princess of Elpasa. However, she reassures herself that if he knew, he would have already acted. The next day, Alessandro once again asks her to polish his armor. As she works, Alessandro brings up a letter from Deputy Chief Jorge, who mentioned Chloe's interest in writing a book about medicinal herbs. Alessandro asks if she wants to continue, and surprised that he's asking for her opinion, Chloe eagerly agrees. Alessandro silently observed Chloe as she confidently declared her desire to write the book. He marveled at the change in her demeanor. This wasn't the same timid girl who couldn't even look him in the eye. As he studied her, he noticed details he hadn't before. Her dark brown eyes, her small nose, and her lips, which he found strangely reminiscent of a squirrel's, causing him to turn away to stifle a laugh. Presenting a letter from Jorge, Alessandro instructed her to read it. Chloe's eyes welled with tears as she read the heartfelt words from Jorge, encouraging her to continue writing. She felt trusted and valued, overwhelmed by the kindness. Alessandro granted her access to any pens and paper she needed, but made it clear she must deliver her writings every morning to his desk. Chloe thanked him excitedly and left the tent, her heart light. As Alessandro sat alone, his mind briefly wandered to the serious matters at hand, the noble's schemes, but he found himself chuckling again, picturing Chloe's squirrel-like expression. Outside, Chloe searched for a peaceful spot to begin her writing. Finding a large stone, she eagerly set to work, starting with the wood sorrel she had encountered earlier. Writing brought her joy, a feeling she hadn't experienced since being locked away to Cure Hall. She stayed up all night, writing until exhaustion set in. Reflecting on her interactions with Alessandro, she admitted that, though he wasn't harsh, his presence drained her energy. Yet she was grateful for the opportunity. While walking past, Chloe ran into Trigger and Heidi. Trigger noticed how long her hair had grown and complimented her, though Heidi teased her, calling her a pretty boy. Trigger corrected Heidi, insisting Chloe looked like a girl, which left Chloe feeling conflicted. Their playful argument confused Chloe, and she had to step in to stop them from escalating. Meanwhile, Alessandro reviewed Chloe's first submission. He was astonished by her flawless writing, perfectly neat, free of spelling errors, and full of knowledge that seemed beyond a slave's education. Suspicious, he wondered if someone else was writing for her. The next morning, Chloe carried a tray of snacks for Alessandro, but she couldn't find him where she expected. Then, from a distance, she spotted him practicing with his sword. Amazed by his skill, she couldn't tear her eyes away from the scene. Chloe watched Alessandro practice, mesmerized by how gracefully he wielded the heavy sword as if he were dancing. When he noticed her, she startled, announcing that she had brought his meal. He instructed her to leave it, and after he finished his practice, he settled under a tree. She seized the moment to excuse herself, dashing away, leaving Alessandro silently observing her departure. Chloe approached Trigger, who sat under another tree. He greeted her with a smile, teasing her about being a pretty lady. Chloe found Trigger to be a good person. He had always supported her during their time together, helping her navigate her place among the other maids. As they chatted, he inquired about her camping experience and serving Alessandro. She expressed her gratitude, noting the large size of Count Lambeth's territory and how long it would take to reach his manor. Trigger mentioned the abundance of medicinal herbs in the area, sparking Chloe's excitement. He remarked on how her face lit up at the mention of herbs, and she reflected on her passion for studying and writing about them. Unlike her past life, where learning felt like a chore, she now felt empowered and eager to gain new knowledge. At lunchtime, Chloe returned to Alessandro's tent and placed his meal on the table. Her stomach growled, reminding her to grab food for herself. While eating outside, she spotted Alessandro returning. Hurrying, she finished her bread and rushed into his tent, bowing as she entered. He instructed her to write a response to Georges, as the messenger bird would arrive soon. Surprised by the task of writing a letter in front of him, Chloe hesitated, fearing she wouldn't meet expectations. Alessandro, curious about her abilities, leaned closer to examine the herbs she had written about. He found them to be ordinary-looking plants, but recognized a familiar scent, connecting it to a concoction he once received from Sandra. This realization confirmed the accuracy of her writing, but he needed to see her skills firsthand. Chloe stood, unsure if she could sit in his presence. Alessandro motioned for her to take a seat and write. With a mix of nervousness and determination, she settled in, vowing to write quickly and leave. As she began, she felt his gaze on her, prompting her to focus. Alessandro unsheathed his sword, startling her. He asked why she wasn't writing, and she stammered a quick response, pushing herself to write as quickly as possible. Despite her fluid writing, Alessandro's observations led him to question her true background. She appeared to live like a commoner, consuming wild plants and carrying herbs with her, making him doubt her noble status. After a time, Chloe finished and sought his permission to leave. Alessandro examined her handwriting and found it identical to the first letter, the content structured clearly, almost scholarly. Intrigued, he wondered who she really was. Duncan, visibly frustrated, reprimanded his secretary Humphrey for failing to prevent Chris Senlow from attending the ceremony. Humphrey apologized, explaining his efforts to stop Chris's promotion, but Duncan cut him off, expressing his disappointment. In his thoughts, Duncan lamented why Alessandro, the heir to the throne, had to prefer men, wishing instead for a normal family life for his grandson. Duncan reflected on a letter from a source at the ceremony, detailing an incident where Chris visited Alessandro's tent late at night. A maid, presumably Chloe, had rushed out looking terrified, followed by Chris's screams. Frustrated, Duncan crumpled the letter and ordered Humphrey to send a messenger pigeon to Count Lambeth with a stern message. Meanwhile, knights arrived at Lambeth Manor, and Chloe marveled at its beauty, feeling more optimistic than she initially had about the trip. The citizens cheered the knights, and she couldn't help but smile at their warm reception. Count Charles Lambeth read the letter from Duncan, shocked at the demands for sending beautiful unmarried women to please Alessandro. Upon welcoming Alessandro, Count Lambeth praised him, contrasting his fearsome reputation with his noble demeanor. He worried about the young ladies who might be sent to Alessandro, unsure of his true desires. Inside the manor, Chloe was taken aback by the number of guests and wondered if they were all attending the welcome ceremony, prompting her to skip into the parlor. Finding Alessandro there reading a book, she quickly bowed and apologized for interrupting. He pointed to his armor for her to polish, noting her apparent confidence when he wasn't around, likening her demeanor to that of a mouse or a squirrel. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted them, and Chloe heard a woman's voice asking for Alessandro. As she went to check, she was taken aback by the stunning woman who demanded to speak with Alessandro alone. Unsure of what to do, Chloe hesitated, thinking that he might prefer to speak with someone so beautiful. However, chaos ensued when the lady tripped and fell, prompting an angry outburst from Alessandro. He ordered her to leave, causing her to dash out in tears and bump into Chloe as she exited. Confused by the sudden turn of events, Chloe felt a sense of dread when Alessandro called her into the room, fearing his wrath. Chloe stood trembling at the thought of Alessandro's anger, convinced that she was about to be punished. Her fears mounted as she entered the room, avoiding his gaze. But instead of the reprimand she expected, Alessandro simply told her, "I don't like it when others are in my space. Make sure no strangers enter my bedroom from now on." Chloe quickly bowed in apology, feeling tense, and agreed, surprised by his calmness. She couldn't believe he had just turned away a woman after 2 weeks of marching without hesitation. Alessandro instructed her to sit and write to Jorge, the same as before. As Chloe tried to focus, another knock came at the door, sending her heart racing again. A second beautiful woman entered the room, leaving Chloe in awe. She marveled at how stunning this new arrival was, thinking only a woman like her could approach the Grand Duke. The woman introduced herself as Laurent and mentioned that she was staying with Count Lambuth. Laurent approached Alessandro confidently, but his response was as cold as ever. "The Count is making a big mistake," he said, cutting her off. Chloe, frozen in disbelief, watched as Alessandro dismissed Laurent harshly, warning her to tell the Count that if such an incident happened again, there would be consequences. Laurent left the room in fear and shame. Bowing on her way out, Chloe was left utterly perplexed. He actually turned her away too? She thought, trying to understand his behavior. Alessandro, meanwhile, was tired of these relentless attempts to push women on him. He thought back to his parents and their destructive relationship, knowing that a fleeting moment of pleasure wasn't worth the inevitable doom. Before he could gather his thoughts, another knock came, this time from Count Lambuth himself. Stepping outside, Alessandro faced the Count, unimpressed. The Count, clearly tense, explained that the Emperor had sent a letter demanding women be sent to Alessandro's quarters, or it would be considered an act of rebellion. Alessandro sighed inwardly, frustrated by the Emperor's meddling. He had already renounced any claim to the throne, yet his father's pressure persisted. "I understand your situation," Alessandro said coolly, "but I already have company." His words confused the Count, and Alessandro motioned for Chloe to step forward. "Why is he speaking to me so softly?" Chloe thought as he beckoned her closer, holding her hand. Alessandro smiled as he spoke to the Count. "I got lucky to find a woman like this here. I'll be staying with her for the next 3 days. I don't want anyone else but her." The Count, stunned by this revelation, apologized profusely and hurriedly excused himself. Chloe, still in shock, wondered what had just happened as Alessandro continued to hold her hand, leaving her even more bewildered by his actions. Chloe was still in disbelief as Count Lambuth bowed and left, Alessandro's grip on her hand loosening as he sighed with relief. "He's going to stay with me?" she thought, her mind racing with uncertainty. She was anxious and confused, especially after Alessandro's stern order to sit. What was that all about? She wondered nervously. Alessandro, now seated and calm, noticed her hesitation and demanded, "Why aren't you writing?" Jolted out of her thoughts, Chloe quickly picked up her quill, determined to finish the task and leave the room as soon as possible. When Alessandro asked if she was done, she nodded, handing him the letter. But her heart raced as she imagined romantic possibilities. Could he really ask me to stay? Her mind wandered, her face flushing red. Alessandro, noticing her nervousness, couldn't help but smirk. "She's scared of what I said," he thought, amused by her reaction. Her flustered state made him want to tease her more. "I'll be out for patrol tomorrow, but you can stay here in the palace," he said, watching her closely. Chloe, still trembling, nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Grace." She smiled shyly as he dismissed her. "Now go back and rest." With relief, Chloe stammered, "Okay, good night, Your Grace." She practically sprinted out of the room as Alessandro stood up and casually removed his shirt. "I've never seen her move so fast," he mused. Chuckling to himself, his earlier foul mood caused by his father was starting to lift. "Is it because of her?" he wondered. The next morning, Alessandro and Count Lambuth were out on patrol. Alessandro admired the well-kept estate and the people's obvious fondness for the Count. "This place is very well taken care of. You must be doing well, judging by the people's praise," Alessandro said. Count Lambuth, pleased with the compliment, responded, "I'm humbled, Captain. I'll continue to serve the Empire with all my might." Suddenly, Chris Senlo appeared, galloping toward them, looking tense. "Your Grace, we have a problem," he shouted. Alessandro's mood darkened immediately as Chris relayed the news. Sir Lohan's maid and Dr. Smith were dead, and the rest of the household was unconscious. They suspected poison. "Poisoned?" Count Lambuth exclaimed, looking shocked. "I'll call my family doctor right away." Alessandro's gaze hardened as he turned to Count Lambuth. "I can no longer trust you now that this has happened in your manner. You will be taken into custody until we get to the bottom of this." The Count was stunned, but had no choice but to comply as knights surrounded him. Alessandro and his men arrived at the house where the ill were being treated. Sir Lohan was in a bad state, his heavy breathing and high fever evident. He's had stomach pains since yesterday, Evan explained, as the room echoed with Lohan's coughing. The maid and Dr. Smith had bloodshot eyes and nosebleeds before they died, and it looked like Lohan might not survive either. Alessandro, watching the doctor apply a cool cloth to Lohan's forehead, asked, "Is there no cure?" "We need to determine what poison it was first," the doctor replied grimly. The symptoms, fever, stomachache, bleeding, seemed familiar to Alessandro. "I've heard of this before," he thought. Meanwhile, in the manor's kitchen, the maids gossiped about the suspected poisoning. "I heard it was poison," one maid exclaimed. "Oh, that reminds me," another said. "After she ate that wild boar with the knights, she was sick for days." Chloe, hearing this conversation, suddenly felt a sense of recognition. Those symptoms, could it be? She wondered, piecing things together. As Chloe turned a corner in the hallway, she collided with Alessandro, her heart leaping in her chest. "I'm sorry, Your Grace," she stammered fearfully. Alessandro, however, wasn't upset. "No need for apologies. Come with me," he said, his tone calm but serious. "Me?" Chloe asked, confused but following him obediently. Evan, seeing Alessandro enter with Chloe, was puzzled. "Captain, why is that girl here?" he asked, suspicion lacing his voice. Alessandro looked at Chloe and said, "Go have a look at Lohan and his servants." Chloe blinked, shocked. "Sorry? Are you talking to me?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Chloe is asked to examine the sick Sir Lohan, and she quickly deduces that he and his servants were poisoned by eating meat from an animal that consumed scopolia, a poisonous plant. She recommends the narcissus anemone as a cure, which is luckily found in the garden. Despite Evan's doubts about trusting a slave, Alessandro supports Chloe, and her prepared decoction works, allowing Sir Lohan to recover by the next day. Evan scolds Lohan for secretly eating wild boar, causing suspicion to fall on Count Lambeth. The doctor is amazed by Chloe's knowledge and asks to speak with her. During lunch, Chloe informs Alessandro that Sir Lohan has regained consciousness, meaning the ceremony can resume. Alessandro simply asks for milk, startling Chloe, who wonders if his new manor life has made him distant. Observing her polished table setting, Alessandro silently reflects on her unusual knowledge of etiquette for a slave, suspecting a deeper story and growing curious about her background. After leaving, Chloe encounters the doctor, who questions her about the plant she called scopolia. She explains that in her homeland of Elpasa, it's known as scopola, but it may be called belladonna in the empire. Realizing her mistake, she later scolds herself for revealing her origins, vowing to be more careful. As she resumes her duties, a man delivers an invitation from Count Lambeth, who wishes to apologize to Alessandro for the recent events. Chloe reflects on Alessandro's character, impressed by his humility despite his power, and wonders if his mother influenced his upbringing. In the evening, she returned to pack her clothes, but was stunned at the horror before her. All of the Grand Duke's clothes were on the floor, trampled upon and dirty. "Huh? What happened here?" Chloe thought, her eyes in shock. Chloe's heart sank as she saw the Grand Duke's clothes ruined, while others remained untouched. "This isn't fair," she thought, eyes filling with tears. A few nearby maids mocked her, laughing at her for being a war slave from Elpasa and claiming this was what she deserved. Holding the soiled clothes, Chloe cried quietly, feeling the weight of her struggles. "I've tried my best since my rebirth. But this is too much," she thought, wiping her tears before carrying the clothes back. As Chloe carried the clothes back to the mansion, she took a deep breath. "Maybe I should be grateful," she thought, trying to shake off the humiliation. "At least, they can't openly mock me since I'm the Grand Duke's maid." Wiping her eyes, she forced a smile. "I'm fine," she murmured. "I didn't study medicine for people's praise." Her focus returned to the clothes, dread creeping in. "What am I going to do?" Aina's warnings echoed in her mind. "Be careful, Chloe. I heard he enjoys beating women." Her heart tightened. The thought of facing Alessandro with ruined clothes now filled her with dread, as her sadness mingled with fear. Later, Alessandro was in his study with Chris Senlo, who praised Chloe's skills, suggesting she might even be a witch. Alessandro only replied, "I'd be grateful if she doesn't get eaten by one." Chloe entered, and Chris teased her for earning Alessandro's respect before leaving. Observing her face, Alessandro noticed she'd been crying. "I ruined all your clothes during laundry, including the dinner outfit," she admitted, bowing in apology. Alessandro, noticing her teary expression, instructed her to fetch the Count's attendant and call a tailor. He seemed more concerned with practicality than reprimanding her, which Chloe found surprising. After giving her instructions, Alessandro returned to his work. Later, the tailor arrived to take measurements for Alessandro's new clothes. After completing his work for the Duke, Alessandro casually ordered clothes for Chloe as well. The tailor, puzzled by her appearance, asked if she was a boy or a girl. Fearing she'd be made to wear a dress, Chloe stammered that she was a boy, startling the tailor. Wilder, Heidi's master, overheard this exchange and became alarmed, wondering if this meant the Grand Duke was secretly in love with men, given Chloe's feminine face and voice. When Wilder reported to Count Lambeth, the Count was shocked. "What? So you're telling me his maid is really a boy?" he asked, stunned. Wilder confirmed, explaining that Chloe wasn't a maid but a coachman, recalling overhearing Alessandro ordering clothes for him from the tailor. "A coachman?" Count Lambeth asked, trying to grasp the situation. Wilder continued, "Yes, my lord, and according to the head maid, this boy enters his grace's room every night and leaves with him early in the morning." Count Lambeth, perplexed, rubbed his temples as he pondered how to respond to Duncan's letter. Meanwhile, Chloe was lost in thought at breakfast, wondering why she hadn't seen Sir Triger or Heidi since arriving at the palace. She was approached by Thomas, Sir Lohan's servant, who introduced himself and thanked her for saving his life. Embarrassed yet touched, Chloe felt a pang of guilt for her earlier frustrations about feeling unappreciated. Thomas, noticing her shy demeanor, invited her to share meals, making her smile as they ate together. Later, Alessandro, after his evening practice, noticed Chloe by the lake, inspecting her reflection as she considered trimming her hair. "Is this short enough?" she murmured, holding scissors against her hair. As she began to cut, she slipped, almost falling into the water. Alessandro, quick to act, caught her by the waist. Their eyes met, and Chloe stammered a thank you. Alessandro noticed the scissors and asked, "Were you going to cut your hair?" Chloe nodded, explaining that she found it easier to manage with a shorter length. Alessandro, intrigued, remarked, "Don't women usually prefer long hair? Even slaves keep their hair long." Chloe, blushing, explained that she couldn't tie it up, hence the short cut. Alessandro pondered aloud, "Is that why you dress like a boy too?" Handing back the scissors, he said, "Grow it out from now on." Chloe, taken aback, agreed softly, her cheeks flushed. Alessandro thought, she must have had a tough life to make such practical choices. As he walked away, he mused about introducing her to a suitable male servant. Excited to see the clothes Alessandro had ordered, Chloe later entered his room and was stunned by the number of bags. She sifted through the packages, finding a dress. "This can't be for me. Doesn't he know I'm a slave?" she thought, heart racing. Then she noticed an outfit meant for a boy. "Is he serious?" she thought, beads of sweat forming as she tried to decipher Alessandro's intentions. The following morning, Alessandro was preparing to leave Count Lambeth's manor. The Count and his staff stood in front, bowing politely as they bid him farewell. "It's been a true honor to have you stay here, Your Grace," Count Lambeth said, bowing deeply. Alessandro responded with a nod. "Thank you for your hospitality. I trust you'll continue to care well for your land." Just before Alessandro boarded, Count Lambeth approached him with hesitation. "Your Grace, may I speak freely before your departure?" he asked, his tone more personal. Alessandro nodded, though his expression was unreadable. As the caravan moved, Chloe walked alongside Thomas, who noticed her preoccupied expression. "If I wear those clothes, people will definitely talk." She sighed in relief that Alessandro hadn't seen them yet. "I can't throw them away, but what were they thinking, making me clothes like that?" Thomas's voice broke into her thoughts. "That boar did nothing but get me in trouble," he remarked, shaking his head. Chloe nodded, sharing her sympathy about the unfortunate maid and Dr. Smith. Thomas revealed that the maid had snuck in using family connections to attend the ceremony, which surprised Chloe. "Is it that important?" she asked. "Of course," Thomas replied. "It's a huge honor." He then realized Chloe's lack of family, adding, "I guess it wouldn't mean much to someone like you." Chloe fell quiet, her gaze drifting to Alessandro leading the knights. As Alessandro rode ahead, Count Lambeth's final words echoed in his mind. "No parent wants their only child to walk a lonely path. Please understand His Majesty's intentions," the Count had pleaded. Alessandro, disturbed by the personal tone, thought, what rumors did he hear to speak so freely? Nearly a month later, during an evening camp, Chloe was hard at work. "Aren't you going to eat?" Thomas asked. "Oh, go ahead, I'll join later," she said, smiling. Chloe had grown closer to Thomas, as they often worked together. While they talked, Chloe spotted Heidi passing by, but was shocked when Heidi ignored her greeting. I thought you were washing clothes? Come on, I'll help, Thomas offered, snapping her back from her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that Heidi's recent distance was due to her growing friendship with Thomas. Later, Alessandro sat under a tree, eating his lunch, and noticed Chloe exhaling in relief after finishing her tasks. She's finally done. Thomas offered to help, but I prefer doing my own tasks, she thought. She turned to head to lunch, only to see Alessandro staring at her. Oh no, we made eye contact. Why is he looking at me? She fumbled, offering him wine, to which he replied, Bring your lunch here. Startled, Chloe hesitated, but Alessandro's stern look made her obey. As Chloe ate with him, Alessandro wondered, why does she seem uncomfortable around me? Hasn't she been here long enough? He felt unexpectedly irritated at her unease. Meanwhile, Chloe, trying to ease her nerves, mused, He used to terrify me, but after spending so much time around him, he seems just quiet. Then a small bird tumbled from its nest nearby. Chloe's heart went out to it. Poor thing, she murmured. Without hesitation, Alessandro gently picked up the bird and returned it to the tree, a faint smile crossing his face. He's kind to the weak, strong when needed. Maybe this is the real him. Chloe thought, admiring his balance of strength and gentleness. The next day, Alessandro announced, We will resume the march today. Get yourselves ready. His knights cheered enthusiastically, swiftly preparing to set off. While Alessandro mounted his horse, Thomas's voice caught his attention as he noticed Chloe carrying a large load. Hey, you should carry only the light stuff. Let me take those, Thomas offered, noticing her struggle. It's fine, I've got it, Chloe protested. But Thomas shook his head, taking some boxes from her arms. No, you don't. You need to go easy on yourself. Watching the scene, Alessandro observed Chloe's responsible and hard-working nature. She's incredibly diligent, even if it means extra work. She never makes excuses or complains. Despite her status, she's remarkably honest and bright. But she knows so much for someone raised as a slave. Could she have been a noble from another land? He wondered as they continued the march. Your Grace. Chloe's soft voice drew him back. What is it? He replied, his expression firm. If only he weren't so intimidating, she thought, hesitating. He gave me a drinking horn, had clothes made for me. I've never thanked him properly. Nervously, she spoke up. I just wanted to thank you for your kindness yesterday. Alessandro looked down at her, pondering. When did I start feeling responsible for her? He wondered, studying her quietly. Suddenly, a glint in the sky caught his attention. Watch out, he shouted, swiftly turning his horse and diving toward Chloe, shielding her as they hit the ground. Are you all right? He asked, holding her steady as they got up. Yes, I'm fine, she replied, then spotted a knife embedded in the ground inches away. A knife? She gasped, fear flooding her eyes. Just then, men burst from the bushes, bandits the leader barking, Give us your food and women, and we'll spare your lives. Alessandro quickly positioned himself between Chloe and the attackers. Stay behind me, he commanded, drawing his sword. Give me your name, and I'll spare your corpse, Alessandro taunted. The bandit leader laughed. Nice offer, but you won't leave with anything. Kill every single one of them, Alessandro ordered his knights. The fight broke out fiercely, with Alessandro and his men slashing through the bandits. Chloe, over here, Trigger called, grabbing her and pulling her into the bushes. Cover your ears, he instructed, shielding her. With her ears covered, Chloe could still hear the screams and the clash of metal, the brutal scene unfolding beyond her view. This is just like that night in Elpasa. The blood, the terror, she thought, trembling. When the battle finally ended, Alessandro checked in with his general, Evan. What's the situation? He asked. 4 knights are slightly injured, but everyone else is fine. Yet we'll search for their hideout now, Evan replied. Alessandro gave instructions to search the bandits for any identifying information, then turned his attention to Chloe, still quivering in the bush. Approaching her, he gently lifted her to her feet. Chloe, are you all right? He asked softly, noticing her fright. She barely managed to nod, eyes still wide with shock. He lifted her gently. Your Grace? She murmured, startled, yet finding some comfort in his strong presence. As the journey resumed, Alessandro lifted Chloe onto his horse after the ambush, entrusting her to Trigger's care. Trigger walked beside her, noticing she seemed shaken. Grateful for his kindness, Chloe reflected on how people in the Empire had begun to treat her with more respect than she ever received at her home in Elpasa. She thanked Trigger, who reminded her that it was actually Alessandro who had protected her in the fight, making her heart skip a beat. That evening, Chris and Alessandro bathed together in a lake. You don't think it was just an ordinary band of thieves? Chris asked. Alessandro responded, It's just a guess. Chris sighed. The problem is your guesses are usually correct. They had almost as many men as we did and seemed to know we'd be there at that time. Could it have been Viscount Arahan? Alessandro frowned. We'll have to investigate. I hate conflict within noble families. It gets messy. I've had enough fighting for today. Chris dipped himself into the water, sulking. Alessandro thought about the day's bloodshed, realizing how repulsive it felt. If I feel this way, then Chloe must be terrified, he thought, worried. Just then, Chris emerged from the water, grinning. Your maid's name is Chloe, right? You were very protective of her. Is she secretly your daughter or something? It was only natural to protect her, Alessandro replied awkwardly. Chris, baffled, pressed. What do you mean? Alessandro sighed. If your person was in front of you, would you let them die? As they dried off, a rustling nearby caught their attention. Chris grabbed his sword. A figure sprang up from the bushes. It's me, Wilder. Wilder, what are you doing here? Chris asked coldly. Back at camp, Chloe waited outside Alessandro's tent, growing anxious. Why isn't he back yet? She wondered. When Alessandro finally appeared, she greeted him cheerfully. Your Grace. Seeing him shirtless, wrapped in a towel, made her blush, but she followed him inside. Thank you for what you did earlier, she began, only to freeze when he dropped his towel. Huh? What's going on? She thought, dumbfounded. Chloe's heart raced as she watched Alessandro clean his hair. Oh my, she thought, gulping hard. No, if I cover my eyes or look away, that'll just make it more awkward. I'll just talk to him normally. Thank you for saving my life today, she said, her face flushed. Alessandro didn't respond. He simply turned away to grab his robe and get dressed. He really has such a nice body, she thought, feeling her cheeks grow hotter. Will you write another letter today? He asked, breaking her train of thought. Oh yes, Your Grace, she replied quickly. As she sat down to write a new letter for Sir George, Alessandro remained in bed, engrossed in a book. His mind wandered back to Wilder, recalling how he had lied about wanting to take a bath. I should have Chris keep an eye on him, he mused, remembering how terrified Wilder had seemed. I wonder if she's feeling better now. It's a lot for a young girl to handle. He glanced at Chloe as she wrote. Was I 15 when I first joined the war? He pondered, still haunted by nightmares from that time. She's very brave, he concluded. She's still doing her work after everything, and she even came to thank me. By the way, Alessandro said, drawing Chloe's attention and pausing her work. Yes, Your Grace, she replied almost immediately. Didn't you receive your clothes from the tailor? Why are you still dressed like that? He asked. Oh, the thing is, the clothes were a bit... She started but faltered. I think if I wore those clothes around, it would make you uncomfortable, she said. Uncomfortable? He asked, confused. Chloe struggled to find the right words. No, instead of explaining, she decided, dashing out of the tent. You'll understand when you see it, she called back, returning with the dress. Alessandro stared at her, looking perplexed. He seems shocked, too, she thought, her cheeks flushing. Of course he is. It's something a pretty boy would wear. Suddenly, Alessandro burst into laughter, stunning her. Whoa, I've never seen him laugh like that, she thought, surprised by the sight. I knew he was good-looking, but when he smiles, it's even more captivating. But why is he laughing? How is this funny? As Alessandro's laughter subsided, he reflected on how embarrassing this was for Chloe. Now I see why Count Lambeth said what he did. He's an honest man, so he must have reported to father what he thought he saw. Things are taking an amusing turn, he considered. Even though her features are very feminine, I see how they could mistake her for a boy because of her hair and clothes. He decided, whenever we enter a lord's estate, you should wear those clothes, he told Chloe. These? She asked, almost in tears. Yes, he affirmed. Wear these clothes? But people are going to talk, Chloe exclaimed, feeling shy. What is he thinking? People will think he likes boys, she worried. Alessandro smirked. Too bad I won't be able to witness father's reaction. It'd be quite a sight, he thought, enjoying her confusion. Meanwhile, Gilbert met Marquise Burnett over tea. Thank you for the invitation, Marquise Burnett said. Please, it's an honor, Gilbert replied, chuckling. I kept the wedding small to avoid criticism, though it feels a bit humble. It was wise, Burnett replied, eyeing Gilbert, who he saw as greedy and easily manipulated. Have you met His Majesty Duncan Graham? Gilbert clenched his jaw. No, he sent a servant in his place at my appointment. Too busy to attend himself. Burnett smiled, thinking, "This is the ally I've been looking for." "It's common for the emperor to ignore us who live far from the capital," he said, leaning in. "This is no more than a colony to him." "A colony?" Gilbert asked, shocked. "Those far from the capital share this sentiment, but don't dare say it." Burnett then added in a whisper, "There are even rumors that the emperor is dead." "What?" Gilbert gasped. Burnett continued, "Countless nobles who opposed Duncan have met their end. His power is vast." Gilbert's hands shook. "I aimed for a place in the royal palace, but one wrong move and I'm dead." "Lord Gilbert, don't you want a private army?" Burnett asked coolly. Marquise Burnett's voice grew cold. "I hear all the soldiers here report directly to Duncan." "No way. I don't have permission to command my own troops," Gilbert exclaimed. "But don't you feel unsafe?" Burnett pressed. "They could get orders from Duncan to turn on you at any time." Inwardly, Burnett was thrilled. "I know Marquess Gilbert well, greedy and easily swayed. The Empire has abandoned him, leaving him ripe for my plans. He's practically a gift from the heavens," he thought, a pleased smile crossing his face. The next morning, Thomas walked past Chloe while carrying Evan's breakfast. "Chloe, have you had breakfast?" he asked. "Not yet, Sir Thomas. I just delivered breakfast to His Grace," she replied. "He already had breakfast? He starts his day so early," he exclaimed. "Chloe, can you help me carry this? Let's have breakfast together after we bring this to the general," he suggested. "Okay," she agreed. As they approached Evan's private tent, he looked up at Chloe. "Did His Grace finish his breakfast already?" he asked. "Yes," she answered, turning slightly away. "All right, you may go," Evan said, dismissing her. Chloe felt uncomfortable around him, sensing his gaze. "I don't think he recognizes me, but I still feel anxious," she thought as she left his tent. Meanwhile, a maid confronted Thomas. "Disgusting! Why did you bring her here?" she said harshly. "Disgusting? What do you mean?" Thomas replied, confused. "Didn't you know she's a slave from Elpasa?" The maid scoffed. Evan's attention sharpened at the mention of Elpasa. "Is that true?" he asked, looking serious. The maid confirmed Chloe's background, raising Evan's curiosity. "So she's a war slave? I need to look into this," he thought, trying to recall if he had met her before. At the Imperial Palace, Duncan Graham read a letter from Count Lambeth. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Thank you for your continued grace," he read aloud. "Enough with the formalities. What about my command?" he asked, quickly searching for the key details. He found a section about sending 2 women to the captain, only for them to be sent away. Lambeth noted that the captain had a partner with delicate hands and a soft voice. Duncan's expression shifted as he processed this information. "So the rumors are false," he remarked. He continued reading and learned that the captain had spent several nights with his coachman. 4 nights, he repeated, feeling taken aback. He glanced at Humphrey, his secretary, who stood nearby. "What could be in this letter?" Duncan wondered. "I heard Chris was drinking during his time at the manor, so it can't be about him. Could it be about Evan?" Humphrey thought, realizing the implications. Suddenly, Duncan let out a loud laugh, surprising Humphrey. "Your Majesty?" Humphrey asked, unsure of what was amusing. Duncan's thoughts turned dark as he reflected on his past actions, how he had manipulated people for his gain. Duncan had taken a child from the streets and posed him as the emperor's illegitimate son. And after that, he accused the Majesty of it, taking over the throne by force. After making himself the ruler, he killed the boy without hesitation. Not only that, he killed the girl his wife gave birth. "Your father killed the girl my wife gave birth to, correct?" he asked Humphrey. "He didn't kill her, but abandoned her in the forest," Humphrey replied. Duncan sank back into his chair, realizing he might pay a heavy price for his past sins. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Manhwa content. See you in the next one.